What I learned from my lunch. September 28th. Today, my fellow watchers, my worldview changed over lunch, and I wanted to share it with you. I was in a local Italian restaurant enjoying a delicious pasta dish when my friend explained that pasta is not actually Italian, but Chinese. Later, I did a little investigation about pasta, and while my friend wasn't exactly right, it made me think a lot about the history of trade and the recent debates about the importance of international trade policies. The popular story is that when the explorer Marco Polo from Venice returned from his exploration of China in 1292, he imported pasta to Italy. However, there is a historical document in the Spaghetti Museum in Ponte d'Asio, Italy, from 1279 describing a soldier leaving pasta for his family. Clearly, pasta had existed in Italy long before Marco Polo returned to Venice. Pasta may have arrived in Italy from a number of different sources. One possible source was Chinese tradespeople selling pasta to the Italians. There is a long history of pasta in China, including historical evidence from 300 BCE of Chinese writings about noodles. Another possible explanation is that pasta was exported from the Middle East to Italy. The Italians could have purchased pasta from the Persians, now the Iranians, in the Middle East. Reshta is the word for string in the Iranian language of Farsi, and Persians have cooked reshta since the medieval period. But is the origin of pasta really that important? Arguably, Italians are now the pasta experts because they have been creating classic pasta recipes for close to 1,000 years. And it made me think about how international trade can really benefit a country. In the week before my eye-opening pasta lunch, there were several debates in the news about restrictions on international trade. For several months, representatives of different groups had been arguing the advantages and disadvantages of free trade. After learning about how trade benefited and changed pasta, I now understand the argument for not limiting the number of countries we trade with. I believe we should remove all trade barriers and allow other countries to both freely sell us products and buy our products. Every business enterprise today knows the importance of different perspectives. Pasta is an excellent example of this. Because of trade, influences from multiple countries helped pasta become the world-famous food it is today. Why not allow this to happen for all types of products?
It was always my intention to start up my own business, although I don't think I realized how much of a challenge it would turn out to be. I was living in the US and working in the hospitality industry, but in 2009, I lost my job. After that, I decided to move back to Mexico City and try and set up my own business. I had a friend I'd known since we were young, and he and I agreed to go into business together. At the time, there were plenty of hostels for backpackers and travelers, as you'd expect, I guess, but they were very basic. We imagined something else, a hostel that was really stylish and sophisticated. We thought it would appeal to experienced travelers. We imagined a kind of traveler hub with good quality rooms that also provided other services that experienced travelers want. You know, somewhere to eat, a social area to connect with other people, a rooftop pool, private rather than shared bathrooms, a laundry area, that kind of thing. I convinced my family to give me money, and after doing a lot of paperwork, I even managed to get a loan from the bank. Finally, I was able to buy an old building and start turning my ideas into reality. Things went well initially. Then the person I thought was my friend backed out and went to Europe with his girlfriend. That's why I was left to do everything on my own. Somehow, I managed to get the hostel opened in 2012. In the first couple of years, we did really well and things started to look up. But then people in the neighborhood started renting out their homes through companies like Airbnb and HomeAway, and because of that, our bookings fell dramatically. I don't blame them. What a great way to make money after all. Interestingly, the neighborhood of Roma Sur, where the hostel was located, saw a 285% increase in bookings through Airbnb between 2014 and 15. Owing to so much competition, we just couldn't make enough money. The hostel Roma closed down in 2017.
I think it's true to say that my small business took off due to help. Well, due to indirect help from a multinational bank. I have a mobile food truck and sell Thai street food. For many years, I'd been selling at local markets or music festivals or sometimes on South Beach. You need to have a license to park your truck and sell, and there are limits to how long you can stay in one place. It was putting me off running the business, to be honest, because I didn't have a regular spot. So some days I'd hardly sell anything. Then I got a call from the National Food Truck Association, which is an organization I belong to. They told me that a big bank had transferred its head office to the outskirts of the city because of rising rental costs, and that they wanted to offer their staff a variety of gourmet food from trucks set up in a communal outdoor space, in addition to a staff cafeteria. And they wanted to know if I'd like to be part of the project. Well, of course I said yes. So basically, every Monday and Thursday, I'm there with my chicken satay and my pad thai and stir-fried rice. Business is booming. It's a really cool space, and workers at the bank say they love having such interesting and varied options for lunch. There's a bagel truck and a guy who has different kinds of burgers and a salad truck. Other businesses in the area are interested in getting involved too, so I might be able to move around during the week to different venues. Because I've cornered the market in Thai food, I'm guaranteed to sell out by the end of the day, and therefore my profits are up by around 50%. It was the most amazing opportunity and one I'm so glad to have been offered.
Bitcoin and blockchain technology. In recent years, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies have become much more common. You can convert regular money into Bitcoins online. You can then buy, sell, and invest Bitcoins, and you can spend Bitcoins at companies such as Microsoft. You can even use Bitcoins to pay for a trip into space with Virgin Galactic. But what exactly is Bitcoin, and how might the technology it is based on change our world in the future? Most regular currencies, such as the US dollar, are controlled by a central bank. In the case of the dollar, the Federal Reserve controls the supply of money and generally makes sure there is enough money to meet demand but still maintain the value of the currency. The dollar is only worth something because the Federal Reserve supports the currency. However, Bitcoin is a digital currency without any central control. Its value is created by the blockchain technology behind it. Bitcoin started in 2008 when an article describing a new digital currency was published under the name of Satoshi Nakamoto. Nakamoto is a mysterious person, and no one knows who he or she is. The following year, 2009, the first Bitcoins appeared. Bitcoins are mined by computers solving very complicated mathematical problems in the Bitcoin system. For doing this, they are rewarded with Bitcoins. Over time, these problems get harder to solve, and so it becomes harder to create Bitcoins. This whole process will stop when there are 21 million Bitcoins, and no more will be created. But don't think you can get rich easily by mining Bitcoins. You need a warehouse full of specialized computers to do the kind of work the system requires. So how do you spend Bitcoins? It's all built around the blockchain. The blockchain is a record of every single transaction involving Bitcoins since the currency started. Bitcoins are stored as encrypted strings of characters in digital wallets. When you send a Bitcoin from your account to another account, computers on the network start to confirm that transaction. This is the mining work that earns Bitcoins. When enough computers have confirmed it, it becomes part of the blockchain, and that Bitcoin now belongs to the other person and is stored in their wallet. Blockchain technology has applications in many other areas where we need to securely track things. For example, It could be used to locate and process all the parts involved in a business's supply chain, making manufacturing more efficient. This would lead to cheaper products. It could be used to create a secure digital voting system. And in a world of the Internet of Things, where devices such as driverless cars are connected and share data, blockchain technology can make communication between those devices safe and secure. Bitcoin could be just the beginning of a data revolution. Applications and Issues in Biomechanics by Bruce Martin. The field of biomechanics is increasingly important in the modern world. Biomechanics is the science of movement of humans and animals. It combines ideas from physics, engineering, and biology in order to understand how internal and external forces interact during different types of movement. Biomechanics is important in fields as varied as office furniture design, physical therapy, medical equipment design, and perhaps most extensively, sports and exercise science. In sports, biomechanics has many different applications. First, it is used to study athletes' movement in order to help them improve their performance. For example, an American football coach records the players as they pass the ball in order to analyze the position and movement of the passers' heads, arms, or feet. This allows coaches to observe players passing the ball from many different angles and to recognize problems that can be corrected to make their passing more effective. Sports equipment manufacturers spend years trying to come up with new types of shoes, clothing, and equipment that will improve athletic performance, and biomechanics helps designers know what types of improvements will be most useful. In today's high-tech world, athletes have an easier time getting to the top in their sports if they have the latest, best equipment. We see athletes of all types breaking more and more records in part because of technical innovations in their clothing and equipment. Finally, one of the most important applications of biomechanics is in the area of sports injuries, both in prevention and treatment. Research in the field of biomechanics helps coaches and sports doctors understand the types of movements and impacts that cause injuries. By studying how muscles, tendons, and ligaments move and exert force, medical professionals can decrease the frequency of injuries. Furthermore, biomechanics plays a big role when injuries do occur. Using modern physical therapy techniques and equipment often means that athletes have less difficulty recovering from injuries than in the past. Biomechanics has helped sports and athletes in many ways. Nevertheless, there is a disadvantage to the advances in biomechanics. While movement studies produce better equipment and some safer practices in sports, they also increase athletic ability in ways that make certain sports more dangerous. One example is American football. Players are bigger and stronger than they used to be, and they understand how to use their bodies for maximum efficiency. Some say this has led to an increase in injuries in this sport. Constant advances in biomechanics and other sciences make sports more exciting for fans. If sports are exciting, then more fans watch. Advertisers pay to advertise during televised sports events, and fans pay to attend or watch those events, so everyone is happy. We can't discount the importance of fans' enthusiasm, but should there be limits to improving performance? Should a better understanding of the physics of injuries lead to a ban on tackling in American football or heading in soccer? It is difficult for many fans to imagine sitting around watching football or soccer without those things, but is it ethical to allow players to continue to do things that may permanently damage their health?
Okay, so we have to prepare a presentation on inequality in sports for the next class. Let's talk about what the issues are.
I was listening to a podcast about sports funding last night, and they were saying that one of the biggest problems in sports is with inequality in funding. You know, the way in which some sports and athletes get more money than others.
You mean how much money male players get in comparison to female players? They get so much money in sponsorships from sports companies.
Well, the differences in funding between men's and women's sports is definitely one of the biggest issues. In this country, about 40% of athletes are women, but only about 6 to 8% of sports media shows women's sports.
But is that because there just isn't demand for women's sports? Would most people rather watch men's sports?
It's kind of a vicious circle. If media organizations are afraid that people won't be interested in women's sports, they don't cover them. But if they don't report on women's sports, people won't get interested in them. Whatever sports the media covers the most are the ones people are going to be most interested in.
And what about inequality in funding for different types of sports?
Well, in the US, there is no government funding for programs that train athletes for big sports competitions like the Olympics or the World Cup. Most of the funding comes from corporate sponsors and individual donors, so they can spend their money however they want. Most of them give money to the most popular sports.
And because the U.S. government doesn't allocate money for sports programs, there's also socioeconomic inequality.
What did you mean?
A lot of sports like golf, tennis, and rowing are expensive. You have to buy expensive equipment and pay to be a member of a club. That means that only people with a lot of money can do those sports.
So people who have money can do the sport, but others don't have as much opportunity.
Right. People think that in sports, everyone has an equal opportunity, but socioeconomic level has a lot to do with who can be successful in a lot of sports. Whoever says that anyone can have a sports career doesn't understand how the system in this country works.
It's not just this country. I think wherever you go, you'll find inequality in sports opportunities. In my country, there usually aren't sports programs in schools, so people have even less opportunity to learn a sport.
But doesn't your government fund and promote athletic programs? Almost all countries have government funding for sports except the US.
Yes, the government pays for the funding of Olympic and World Cup athletes. But it really only makes investments in sports that we tend to be good at, like soccer and track. Also, there's no government funding for sports programs for kids. So lower-income kids can play soccer or maybe baseball, but it's only kids with money who can get into other types of sports.
So I guess no matter what country you're from, inequality in sports is a problem.
Okay, so there seem to be 3 main issues in sports funding and promotion: gender inequality, inequality in funding for different sports, and socioeconomic inequality. Do we want to talk about all of them or focus on one?
I think we should focus on one. Our presentation is only 10 minutes, so I don't think we'll have time to talk about all of the issues.
I agree. Whichever issue we choose, we need to present all sides of it so the class can discuss it.
Okay, so let's figure out what we want to focus on.
Have you ever thought about why some sports are considered to be Olympic sports and others aren't?
What do you mean?
Well, squash is a really popular sport, but it's not an Olympic sport. Neither is bowling, and we've all been bowling at some time in our lives, haven't we?
True, that is a bit strange.
So I was looking at how the Olympic Committee decides whether or not a sport will be included in the Olympics, and it's kind of interesting. I always thought the decision was based just on how difficult the sport is and how widely it's played, but that's not true. They also look at things like popularity with the public and gender equality.
So do they consider how many countries participate in the sport?
Yes, they do. Although sometimes I think they don't give enough importance to that. I mean, look at basketball. That's an Olympic sport that all countries can compete in. Basketball is a sport that other countries have a chance to win.
I know the US dominates in basketball, but think about it. Maybe having basketball in the Olympics helps promote the sport in other countries. Also, there are other sports in the Olympics that are dominated by other countries. For example, in table tennis, the best players are almost always Chinese. So I think there's a balance. Some countries have an advantage in some sports and some in other sports.
I guess so. Do you think there are any Olympic sports that are outdated or shouldn't be considered as sports?
Actually, yeah. I think they need to get rid of rhythmic gymnastics and synchronized swimming. Those are more like artistic shows than sports. If they discontinued those, they could add some new events.
Like what?
I don't know, maybe some fun stuff like zorbing. You know, the competitors are inside a giant inflatable ball and they make it move by running inside it.
Zorbing? People running inside plastic balls? Seriously?
Sure, why not?
Huh. Well, how about dancing? There's dancing in every country. It's physically demanding, and it's really popular with the public. People love watching dance shows on TV. I think, broadly speaking, dancing is a sport.
You gotta be kidding. We get rid of rhythmic gymnastics and synchronized swimming and add dancing? No way.
I thought you were in favor of breakdancing as an Olympic sport.
I am, but breakdancing is completely different from other kinds of dancing. Breakdancing is like a kind of gymnastics.
That's so not true, Andrew. Breakdancing is nothing like gymnastics. And I don't think it's internationally popular, is it?
Sure it is. It started in the US, but people all over the world do it. And it would be an event that young people would love watching.
Maybe, but I still think there could be several different types of dances in the category of dance.
What about things that are more mentally challenging than physically difficult, like chess, for example?
I don't think activities like chess would be generally accepted by the public as Olympic events.
I'm not so sure about that.
Medical services, changing lives across the globe. With tens of millions of the world's people experiencing difficulties with accessing health services, businesses are interested in bringing healthcare solutions to the global market. Journalist Louise Salsa went to investigate. Busara Chande sits on the steps outside her hut in rural Tanzania, recovering from the birth of twins. "I'm so happy they're here," she says, holding back tears. "Niku almost didn't make it. If the taxi ambulance service didn't exist, I'm sure he wouldn't have survived. As it is, he is just perfect." Busara's story is unusual because both her babies survived due largely to a service based entirely on cell phones. When Busara realized her babies were on the way, she used her cell phone to call a health worker who connected her to one of the 130 taxi drivers operating in the charity network. The nearest driver to Busara, Noel Abassi, responded to the call. Without such a service, Busara would probably have had to walk to the hospital, or if she were very lucky, she would have gone by ambulance. Unfortunately, her region has only 2 ambulances for a population of 500,000. Noel's taxi, which cost a mere $40 for the charity, a large amount for Busara, potentially saved the lives of 3 people. 1,000 miles from Tanzania, in Rwanda, another medical service is being tested with amazing results. It is the world's first national delivery service for medication and blood for blood transfusions, which only uses drones. The battery-operated drones provide a life-saving service delivering blood to 13 million people. Sometimes the deliveries are made to hospitals or clinics, and sometimes to individuals in hard-to-reach areas. One person who benefited from these deliveries is a farmer, Sebahive, who suffers from a respiratory disease. If he had lived in the capital city, medication would be available for him at his local clinic. But 28 minutes after calling the emergency drone service, the medication had been delivered. "I have 5 children. If the drone hadn't arrived, they would be orphans now," says Sebahive. On the other side of the world is a medical camp where refugees are provided with access to essential medical services they have been deprived of. Tariq is from Iran and was affected by severe stomach pain, but with no English, he was unable to explain his symptoms. Fortunately, he was able to use a new app for translators. This new app recommends one of over 8,000 volunteer translators based on the language they speak and the area of medicine they specialize in. The translator can then offer advice about what to do. Luckily, says Tariq's wife, the volunteer translated into Farsi for us, and they were able to diagnose appendicitis and transfer him to a hospital. What is clear is that these innovative business ideas have made a real difference to groups of people across the globe. Simple but practical solutions that really can, and do, save lives.
Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of Medical Monthly. With me in the studio today is Bethany Fernandez, our health and medical expert. Were there any particular medical advancements or developments that stood out for you this year, Beth?
Well, I guess in the area of technology, Sue. For example, one aspect of this is biotechnology, where living organisms are used to produce a medical product. So antibiotics, which are drugs you take when you have an illness such as pneumonia, are an example of biotechnology. There've been some interesting developments there. Also, some major advances in pharmaceuticals or medicines, and also in the development of medical devices and equipment. This ranges from small innovations like bandages for wounds to larger, more complex technologies like MRI scanning machines, artificial organs, and robotic limbs that replace ones lost through accident or injury. Technology is having an incredible impact on medicine.
But will these technological advances help us live longer? That's the ultimate goal of medical innovation, isn't it? To increase life expectancy above the global average of around 72 years.
Well, yes and no. Some medical innovations can help us live longer, but much of the innovation is around reshaping public health care as a whole. For example, you might have heard of the Internet of Things.
Yes, I think so. Is that where smart devices are connected to one another?
Yes, that's right. Well, there's a move toward creating a similar system for healthcare. This is where wearable devices, sensors, or apps can allow doctors to monitor a patient's health without them having to go to a clinic or hospital. One such device measures about 2 millimeters by 2 millimeters, and even though it's tiny, it promises to help physicians check a patient's eating habits and predict conditions such as heart disease or high or low blood pressure.
How? How can it do that?
Well, it's fitted neatly on your tooth, and sensors on it sense how much salt, sugar, and even alcohol are being consumed. This data is transmitted wirelessly for analysis by the person's doctor. The developers claim that the responsive sensors on the device can be adapted so that it can be worn on the skin, allowing it to have hundreds of other uses.
That really does sound like the stuff of science fiction fantasy.
Yes, doesn't it? And this is really where medicine starts to get exciting. Now that we can sequence and even clone a person's DNA, there are so many more medical possibilities. For example, some medicines can now be adapted to the individual patient so as to treat whatever condition they have. This can be especially useful in cases where patients develop infections easily. It would allow doctors to vaccinate their patients precisely when required. In the case of some types of disease, such as cancer or leukemia, scientists are able to manufacture specific white blood cells that are designed to hunt out, attack, and destroy the cancer cells. The hope is, of course, that we can eliminate such diseases completely.
That would be incredible.
There are still huge numbers of ways that practitioners, the people working in all areas of medicine, hope to continue to improve the health and the health care of people across the world. Another advance is the ability to reproduce human skin cells. Scientists can take these cells and create areas of skin tissue using a 3D printer.
Really? That's amazing.
Yes. Despite it being in the early stages of development, Israeli scientists at Tel Aviv University have already created a small heart from human tissue. The hope is that in the future, medical teams will be able to reproduce fully functioning organs for operating on transplant patients. This will mean that people no longer have to wait for donated organs, such as hearts and lungs, from someone else.
I've seen something about this in Japan, I think, where they use robots to assist patients with dementia. And what about the use of robotics? You mentioned that at the beginning of the show. I'm really interested in this area.
That's right. One Japanese nursing home is trialing a robot called Pepper who leads exercise classes and a furry seal who interacts with patients when they touch him. The global market for these things is small, but it's expected to grow to about $4 billion by 2035 when a third of Japan's population will be 65 and over.
And just a quick note on that for our listeners. You can actually hear more about the impact of robots when we'll be looking at how robots are being used to perform surgery in the next series of the show.
We all recognize and accept the importance of staying hydrated. Medical experts recommend that we drink at least 8 glasses of water per day in order to stay happy and healthy. So why H2O water? What distinguishes our water from other bottled water is that our water is naturally filtered and bottled at the source. Do your body a favor and always insist on H2O water. All superheroes have to be healthy and strong. Milk is an excellent source of many important vitamins and minerals, including calcium, which your bones need to stay strong. So when your mom says to drink your milk, you can safely assume that mom knows what's best for her little hero. Milk, your secret superpower. I'm becoming my dad. I knew this day would come. I'm becoming my dad. The other day I was at the beach with my kids, and we just finished our lunch. They wanted to run straight back to the ocean, but I heard myself saying, "You have to wait half an hour after eating before you can swim again." I recall my dad telling me that when I was a kid, and who am I to reject his advice? Knuckle cracking. We've cracked it. The medical myths team is happy to debunk what your family has been telling you for years. Despite what they say, it is not true that cracking your knuckles leads to arthritis. A California doctor named Donald Unger cracked the knuckles of his left hand at least twice a day, but didn't crack the knuckles on his right hand. At the end of the experiment, which lasted 50 years, there was no sign of arthritis in either hand. Myth debunked.
Where I come from, I'm from Colombia, we use a combination of conventional medicines and traditional medicines. Obviously, conventional medicines are most often prescribed by doctors, but many people use herbs and plants in treating common health issues. For example, we use dandelion leaves to make a tea to help stomach pain, and an herb called calendula to help with skin problems. I see both types of medicines as equally important. Traditional medicines go back a long way, so I see no reason to not use them.
Traditional Chinese medicine goes back 2,500 years and includes different forms of treatment, from massage to acupuncture to Tai Chi. The concepts of disease and illness in China generally differ from those in the West, in that they are seen as an imbalance of the elements of the body we call yin and yang. A Chinese doctor will usually look at the tongue and feel the pulse to diagnose what is wrong with the patient. Although it takes a very different approach to that used in Western medicine, I think that the number of people who practice it around the world makes it medically very significant.
I'm a doctor who practices alternative and complementary medicine. This means that I look for alternative solutions such as yoga, meditation, and homeopathy, or natural medicine and methods to treat medical conditions. Sometimes I only use alternative medicine, but I also use them with more mainstream or conventional medical approaches too. I see them as going hand in hand. Many scientists and researchers only seem to analyze medical effectiveness from the point of view of treating or curing an illness. I like to look at it as healing the whole person.
I guess you could say I'm very much a believer in the conventional approach to medicine. I use manufactured drugs and scientific inquiry to find ways of improving or maintaining my patient's health. We save millions of lives a year with medications that have taken decades of research to develop, and that's proof enough to me of how effective modern medicine can be.